With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Tes. We're going to have now the final Amid speaking more pratim about the Malacha of Hoitzah. We're going to be learning a couple of detail differences between a lechi and a koira that has to be placed aside of us needing to make a Eruv Chatzeres and or a Shituv Muva'is, allowing us midrabanan to carry from the homes into the Chatzer that is shared, from the Chatzer back into the homes. Shituv Muva'is, which will allow various members of the Chatzerim to carry from the Chatzer into the Mavoi, from the Mavoi into the Chatzer. Aside of making that Shituv, there also has to be a physical marker that will remind people that this is the Mavoi and that is the Rishus Rabim. And the options that we have is either to put a lechi, a side post, or a koira, a cross beam, as we'll speak a couple of more details when we learn the Gemara. There are some nuanced differences that we'll be learning here on Daf Tes. We're going to be basically analyzing the final laws that are brought down in the Braisa on Daf Vav, which is a fundamental Braisa. The Braisa that begins Tan Rabbanon, Dalid, Rishuyas, L'Shabbos, Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, Karmelis, and Amakim P'tur. We are almost at the end of analyzing that Braisa. We're going to be learning a very unique shita of the Tana Rabbi Meir that holds, listen to this, that if you have two Rishuyas HaYachid that are distinct from each other in the context that in a private domain, but outdoors, outside, there is a post that is 10 tvachim high or more, 4 by 4 wide or more, meaning it in itself is a Rishus HaYachid, belonging to the same balabayis, belonging to the same person. So based on everything that we learned right now, it's a Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaYachid, belonging to the same person. Why would you not be allowed to carry from one to the other? There's a takana that Rav Meir holds we make, that since if a similar post would be in the Rishus HaRabim, right, a post that's 10 high, 4 by 4, which makes it into a Rishus HaYachid, they're obviously not allowed to transport from the Rishus HaRabim to a Rishus HaYachid. So Gezeira, even if it is inside a Rishus HaYachid, listen to this, but outdoors, imagine you have a backyard, and in your backyard you have a distinct Rishus HaYachid, because it's something that's elevated, 10 tefachim, 4 by 4 wide. Rabbi Meir holds, and Rabbi Meir and the Achenim, as we spoke from Hoydiyas Daf Yud Gimel, is the same Tana. He was at a certain point called Achenim. They hold that there is a gezerah that you may not do Haitzah from one of this to the other Rishus HaYachid.
Even the same owner.
Even though it's the same owner. Okay, good. Then on Daf Tes Amid Beis, we're beginning a whole new sugya. As an intro to certain activities that one should refrain from on Erev Shabbos, next to Shabbos. We're not even going to learn about Shabbos yet, but we're going to give a general intro of various activities that one may not do, or at least one may not begin samuch l'chashecha, samuch l'mincha, approximately before the time of mincha. We're going to speak exactly what mincha are we referring to, mincha gedola, mincha ketana. In other words, there are certain activities that if it's about to be the time to daven mincha first. Don't begin that activity. And we're going to speak about taking a haircut, and we're going to actually define the halachic definition of the beginning moment of taking a haircut. When does it begin? Taking a bath. When do we view, now you already began to take a bath. Beginning of a tanning session, not Keilu today in 2020, people think tanning, the Oiv de Achama. No, we're speaking about the tanning heights, not worshiping the sun. When is it the beginning of a tanning session? And once you began it, we'll see one din, but l'chatchila don't begin it because it's samach l'mincha. When you're not supposed to begin a meal, samach l'mincha. How do you define the beginning of the meal? And we're going to chazer some of the dinim we learned in brachas regarding whether ma'ariv is chayva or whether ma'ariv is rishus, and how it affects the dinim that we will be learning in that mission. Okay, so we are still up to Daf Tes Amid Aleph. So let's chaparayin and enjoy the final amid of Hoitzah here in the first Perek. And again, the Brais on Davav Amid Aleph, the Daled Rishuyas L'Shabbos quotes the Shita of Achedim. And again, we are learning about this Iskufa. Now, Atkan, we spoke about Iskufa means a threshold. It was normally a little bit above the ground level. It projected into the outside domain. We already learned both about an Iskufa that has Daled al Daled. We also learned about another Iskufa that has less than Daled al Daled. Big nafkamina, whether it is a caramelist, whether it is a makim patur. Now we're going to be learning about another iskuf. And now let's again speak about in the times of Chazal, the way people built neighborhoods was you had homes, plural, that were opened up into one shared chatzar. These yards were front yards. They were in front of various homes. Various yards opened up into what we will call a mavui, which is a cul-de-sac. We're speaking dafka about a mavui she'ein lemefulish, which means it's not a mavui that is opened in both sides. It's not a mavui that people can go through. It's closed off. And let's follow, we're learning Gemara Rashi. Rashi holds that any area that is closed off by three sides, biblically, has a din of a reshus hayachid, which means that one would be allowed to carry in that mavui, right? And to carry from that mavui into the chatzeres. But Chazal also said that no, the mavui belongs to everyone. Each yard only belongs to the people that live in the houses that go into the yard. So you got to make a shituf allowing everyone to carry everywhere. And that shituf was done via means of everyone shipping in to buy food together. They are all partners in food, which is left in one locale. So everyone has access to that locale. And why would I, if I own this location, why would I allow everyone to go into my location? Because everyone, you are allowing me to go into your location. And we'll speak more details in Eruvin. So it's a way of making everyone ki'ilu partners in all of the properties. Aside of that, there's another worry. Since the mavui opens up to the public domain, then people might go from the mavui to the reshus harabim. And that's a problem because biblically the mavui is a reshus hayachid. So if you're going to carry something from the reshus hayachid into the reshus harabim, you're going to do an act of reitzah. So Chazal wanted for us to put a marker to remind us, Atkan reshus hayachid, mikan olahalim reshus harabim. And we have two options. One option is to put up a lechi, one side post. A side post, we're going to learn the pratim of how high, how wide. From this Gemara, if you have pictures, that's going to be helpful. If not, the concepts are easy to chap, even if you don't get the exact mitzias. The mitzias of the lechi is, well, let's speak about a mavui that has a threshold going into the reshus harabim. And make no mistake, in those days, most of these mavuis had doors, whether it was one large door or a double door. People didn't want that. The mavui should be open at night. Okay, so where would they place the lechi? So if the threshold has a certain depth, has a certain length, whatever that was, so they would place the lechi as close as they could to the door, in the innermost part of the threshold, separating the mavui going into the reshus harabim. Now, that lechi was effective until what point? That lechi is effective only until the lechi. That means if I am carrying in the mavui, I can only go up until the lechi. Not only can I only go up until the lechi and not beyond the lechi into the reshus harabim, what about the thickness of the lechi itself? The premise of our sugya, and that will be the maskana, just the premise that you can't even walk within the area of the lechi itself. You can only walk and carry, you can only carry in the mavui up until the beginning, the innermost part of the lechi. If the option would be to put a kaira crossbeam, okay, the crossbeam was also normally put in the inner part of the threshold, closer to the mavui, farther from the reshus harabim, but at least one is allowed to carry even under the kaira, even under the crossbeam. So that's the difference between the lechi and the kaira. Lechi you cannot carry in the space of the lechi. By the kaira you are allowed to carry under the area of the kaira. Another interesting halacha that we did not speak about yet, but this is connected to the concept of lavuid or gud asik or gud nachis. There's a concept called pi tikra yoyred v'soisim, which means that if you have any crossbeam that is 4 tfachim wide or more, we make believe as if the edge of this beam has a wall to it that goes all the way down to the ground, which is kind of awesome, because then we view it as if that domain is completely closed off. But in order for us to say that the edge of the roof halachically goes down to the ground, the crossbeam has to have 4 tfachim or more. The qaida itself has to have a width, a thickness, very good, not a height, but a thickness or a length of 4 tfachim. And if it doesn't have 4 tfachim, then we can never apply the din of pi tikra yoyred v'soisim. These are more or less the rules that we will be applying here to understanding what Achedim is saying. So says the Gemara, according to Braisa, Iskufa, This threshold, mishameshes, it functions shtei reshuyas as either of one of the two following reshuyas. It's either one or the other. We're quoting the words of the Braisa. Bisman shapesach pasuach, the havamina of the Gemara, and so will be the maskana according to one approach that we're speaking about, like we mentioned, a threshold that separates a mavui from a reshus harabim. And we want to know up until what point can you carry things in Shabbos, until where is the mavui, from where does the reshus harabim begin, there you may not carry. So Debrai Achedim is saying that when the door is open, then the lechi or the koida functions as a lechi or a koida. Because understand something, if you close the doors to the mavui, then you don't need a lechi and you don't need a koida. Then the mavui becomes a bona fide reshus hayachid because it's closed off from all four sides. So they don't function for anything. But when the door is open, now they are activated as the din of a lechi. Let's begin with the lechi. So therefore, kilafnim means is that the threshold has a din of inside the mavui. You may carry, but pasach. I'm sorry. But if Pesach na'ul, but if the door is closed, so once the door is closed, it's not even a mavui. We don't refer to it as a mavui. A mavui means it's open to the reshus harabim. Even if normally the mavui means, as it does, a mavui she'eina mefulash, but it has to be open on one side. So if the door is closed, then the threshold has a din of kelachutz. The af al gav the lays lay lechi, meaning these are the final words of ask the Gemara. What does the words of Achedim imply? That when the door is open, then the iskufa is like the inside. Asks the Gemara, is it like the inside? The af al gav the lays lay lechi, even though it doesn't have a lechi. Why would it not have a lechi? Because the standard, the norm of the area of the placement of the lechi was in the innermost part of the entrance between the mavui and the reshus harabim, closest to the mavui, and that's number one. And number two, the functionality of the lechi doesn't cover the airspace of the lechi or the width of the lechi. You may only carry up until the lechi if you are inside. So even if the door is opened, since it was put in the beginning of the threshold, beginning meaning closest to the mavui, and you can only carry up until the beginning of that, to the innermost part of that, so you can never carry in the skufa. In the name of Rav, that toicha pesach means inside this the entrance of the mavui. You need to have another lechi to be able to carry. Because the standard lechi that was put for the dinam of a mavui, like we mentioned, was poured in the innermost part of that entranceway. And it never covered the area opposite it. It never covered its own width. So even if the door is open, then there's a lechi, based on the din of Rav Chama, you cannot carry in the iskufa. And v'chi tamer the lays lay, it lays beidal dalad. Maybe since the skufa doesn't have 4x4, and therefore it's like a makim ptur. No, this din of the area of an eskufa, not of a house that we learned about before, but we're speaking dafka about the area, the entrance between a mavli and a reshus harabim. And this is where Chazal were afraid that people might erroneously carry into the reshus harabim. Here we don't use any hetedim. There's no less than dalad al dalad. You can only carry up until the lechi. And af al pi she'ein by dalad al dalad. Again, since the lechi that helps you, allows you to carry in the mavli, was put in the innermost part of the entranceway, the closest to the mavli, and you may not even carry across the ear space of the lechi itself. You can only carry up until the innermost part of the lechi. So basically, the lechis, as they were normally put, never allowed you to carry in any part of the iskufa. And he said explicitly, even if the iskufa has less than dalad al dalad, sarich lechet achil atiroi. So if you put another lechi, then you're good. Then it's going to remind you, atkan, don't go further. If you don't have that lechi, even though this area theoretically has a din of a makim ptur, but it's so close to the reshus harabim that they were afraid you're going to carry into the reshus harabim. Okay. So therefore, there are two approaches. Answer number one is Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. You are right that the Acherim is speaking about an eskufa between a mavui and the Rishus Harabim. However, eskufas mavi askina. However, we're not speaking about a mavui that is using the lechi, the side post, as the heker, but we're speaking about a mavui that's using a koira. And the difference between the crossbeam and the lechi is exactly this, that the lechi only allows you to carry up until the innermost part of the lechi. Unlike the koira, even though the koira was also put closer towards the mavui, it was not put at the end of the eskufa, it was put in the inner part of the eskufa, but you are allowed to carry directly under the crossbeam itself. Chetzioi, I'm sorry, b'mavui yaskinon, and chetzioi mekoira v'chetzioi eino mekoira. Truth be told, this crossbeam doesn't cover the entire area of the threshold. It only covers part of it, because the typical crossbeam had a length, had a thickness of 1 tefach, and that wasn't put at the end. That was put in the beginning. So he's calling it, half of it is covered, the innermost part is covered, the outermost part is not covered. And v'keiriyoi klapefim, this roof is put towards the inside. So now let's learn the Baraisa. Let's see Achedim. Pesach Pasuach, if the door is open, then we say kilifnim. Then the area under the koira is like in the inside. Pesach Na'ul, being that the Pesach is closed, the moment the door of the Mavi is closed, then the Mavi is at Rishus HaYachid, because it's closed from all 4 sides. So the koira is not serving as a function. Now, if the koira would have had 4 tfachim of length or of thickness, not of height, then because of the din of pi tikra yored v'sasum, then we would say that one is allowed to carry under the koira, because it's as if there's a roof and there's a wall separating that area from the Rishus Harabim. But since the classical koira did not have 4 tfachim, it wasn't that long, that thick, so we can't apply the rule of pi tikra yored v'sasum, since it's not functioning as a koira for the mavi, because the mavi doesn't need a koira because the door is closed. Stam, there's a beam, so you may not carry under that beam, and therefore meaning kilachutz, it's like a Rishus Harabim. That's one answer. Ravashi Yamar, no, we're not speaking about a threshold between a mavi and a Rishus Harabim, but lo'olam bi'eskufas bayis askina. We're speaking as we had previously a house that's open to a Rishus Harabim, and there is a threshold. And ukegoin. Now listen to this interesting, unusual scenario. We're going to put a couple of dinim together. First of all, we're standing by this concept. Think about it. You have a house, it opens to the public domain, you have a threshold, and the threshold is covered with beams. These beams did not have 4 tfachim of length. Now interestingly, they made the house in a way that if you were to open up the doors and you were to look up, this chacham put 2 cross beams on the area over the threshold. One very close to the house, one close to the Rishus Harabim. There is less than 3 tvachim in between both cross beams. How does that help the less than 3 tvachim? Based on the law of lavud, if these 2 cross beams are allowed to be lavuded together, then halachically it's 4 tvachim. It's one roof. Together they have 4 tvachim. So we're not speaking about the koira by a mavi that was normally 1 tefach. Obviously 1 and 1. No, I take that back, because it can be 1 and 1. But since it's less than 3, so we can view it, very good, we view it as if it's completely covered. And if it's completely covered, then think about it. So then, since we have a rule of pi tikra yored v'sasum, so it's as if there's a wall that goes all the way down, separating the area of the threshold from the front Rishus Harabim. Now, why would we not say lavud? Because the chacham who built the house, built the doors to the house under the open space in between both of these cross beams. Which means that when you close the doors to the house, from the vantage point of an observer standing on the threshold, not if you're looking on top, but if you're standing on the ground, if the doors are closed, you can't see both beams. So even though the both beams are if you're in the right in the angle straight with the beams, one and the other are near each other within 3 tfachim, we don't apply the law of lavud if the observer doesn't see them together. So that's the whole chiddush over here. So if the doors are closed,
solid roof, then it would be fine.
if it's a solid roof, it's fine. Because then because once you have 4 tfachim, then pi tikra yored d'soisim, you can carry under the beam. You know how relevant that is? Imagine you have a home. Think about now, you have a home. Many homes over here have a certain little roof over the entrance. Because if it rains when you open it, whatever the reason is. If that is 4 tfachim long, even if your home opens mamish to the Rishus Harabim, halachically there's a wall separating you from the Rishus Harabim. Now, does that in itself help? You have to know how many other walls you have. But let's go with Rashi. If that makes a third wall, you have your 3 walls. You're separated. But again, to make pi tikar yored d'soisim, you have to have 4 tfachim. And here the chiddush of the Braisa is that if the person standing on the threshold cannot see both beams, and that were to happen in the case that we're talking about, that the doors are underneath the width, the doors are under the area that's open in between both beams. One beam is in the back, one beam is in the front. So when you close the doors, you can't see them together. If you can't see them together, you can't apply the laws of Lavud. If you can't apply the laws of Lavud, there's no pi tikar yored d'soisim. Then you can always carry inside the door, closed doors in the house. But you cannot carry under the outer beam, because again, that beam per se doesn't have the 4 tfachim.
Is this a call of Lavud that everyone agrees to?
Look, I don't know. I think it's a big chiddush. Do people disagree? You have to know a lot more than I know. Whether you find in Chazal a disagreement to this. But
this idea of the observation.
That's the whole vart of Ravashi. That's his chiddush. I don't know, but that's definitely a chiddush.
If the doors are closed, where are you carrying from?
Doesn't matter. No, doesn't.
The outside is Rishus Harabim. How are you getting into that threshold? Which side are you coming from?
Let's say a person. Very good. I want to ask, what happens if a person is at the edge of the Rishus Harabim, closest to the eskufa, and a person is intending to carry something less than 4 amos? So if that area under the crossbeam is also considered that Rishus Harabim, leads that way, then he didn't do an act of Eitzah. He picked it up and he put it down. If the doors are opened, because of the rule of pi tikra yored lavud, pi tikra. So now it's Rishus HaYachid. So now if the Chacham put it down under the beam, he violated Shabbos. Chayv chatos. Very good. So Ravashi Yamar lo'olam b'искufas bayis askinim. Ukegoyin shekira b'shtei koides. He covered it with 2 beams. But she'ein bezu arba ve'ein bezu arba. Very good. Each one has the normal tefach. And furthermore, ve'ein bein zu lezu shloisha. You don't have 3 or more. You have less than 3, 2.9. And the doors that open up or close the house from the public domain is be'emsatz. It's in the area under the 2 beams. And on that, he teaches Pesach Pesach, if the doors are open. So therefore, the person who's standing, no matter in the house or outside the house, wherever you're standing by, there's nothing obstructing from your view both beams. Pesach Pesach, Kelofnim, because of 2 rules. Aleph, Lavud, Beis, pi tikra yored d'soisim. The moment you close the doors, the person can't see both beams. Haravashi holds, halachically we don't activate Lavud. If you don't activate Lavud, there's no 4 tvachim. If there's no 4 tvachim, there's no pi tikra. So now the area under, that area is like a Rishus Harabim. Gavaldik. Now, the last line in the Braisa on Davav, this is all part of Achedim. If you have, and emphasizing outdoors in a Rishus HaYachid, not indoors in a Rishus HaYachid, and then outdoors in a Rishus HaYachid, you have a Yeskufa, a threshold, that's high 10 tvachim, that has a width of at least 4 by 4. Says Achedim, this is a Rishus for itself. Now, what he means by this, we spoke this out when we learned Avav. Rachenim is not saying Achidish that this is a Rishus HaYachid. We already learned that. That was the beginning of the Braisa. Any location that's high 10 or has mechitzas 10 and has at least 4 by 4 is a Rishus HaYachid. What he means that it's a Rishus for itself, meaning that you, the balabayas of this Rishus HaYachid, you may not carry from your Rishus HaYachid to the Eskufa. You may not do that. Now, at Khan, we never had such a din. We learned that first of all, you can carry in a Rishus HaYachid, Midoraisa. Then we learned that Midrabanan, you may not carry from a Rishus HaYachid that belongs to one ownership to a Rishus HaYachid that belongs to another ownership. Even if you are partners but it has to be exactly the same. So if I exclusively own my house and I own the hallway in front together with you, already not good without an Eruv Chatzeres. Here, everything belongs to the same person. Still, you may not carry. Why not? So Messiah Leila Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, the Omer Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, he says that Omer Hoyer Rabbi Meir. Omer Hoyer Rabbi Meir doesn't mean Rabbi Meir said. When we learned the emesis, when we learned all of Tanoim and Amoraim, we should always say B'Lashon Hoiva because that's the emes. They didn't say it in the past. They're saying. But Omer Hoyer Rabbi Meir, everything, Rabbi Meir Amar, which are Omer Hoyer Rabbi Meir, there were certain sayings of these Tanoim or Amoraim that they constantly said. So these are one of the dinim that Rav Meir always used to say, which was his chiddush. And don't forget that Rabbi Meir is a chayrim. Hoyri is Daf Yud Gimel. So it fits. That kol makim she'atam moitze beis reshuyos, wherever there are two distinct domains, and Chevra the Rishonim add outdoors. That's key, because if not, people learn this, they can't understand how to apply this in our Shabbos. Even though lav dafka we always pass like Rabbi Meir, but still let's understand Rabbi Meir. If one of these reshuyos is outdoors, like a threshold, it's out the house. Veheim reshus achas, even though they are both of the same type. For example, you have an amud, you have a large post that is in the Rishus HaYachid, in your backyard, and it's high 10, and it's wide 4x4. So you would think, what's the problem? Have a backyard, you have your toy set, your swing set, why would you not be able to put your cup of coffee on top of that? By biblically, of course you could. Says Rabbi Meir, Asur lekatav olav. He gives just a mashal. Lekatav means if you have a load and you want to straighten it out, so it's a backpack, you just lean it against it and you put it down in order for you to straighten it out. But it means any type of hanacha may not be made on it, because if I will be used to putting something down on such a post, what might happen? Such a similar post might be in a Rishus Harabim. If that would be in a Rishus Harabim, the top of this post will be a Rishus HaYachid, because it's 10 Tvachim, 4x4. One may never carry Rishus Harabim with Rishus HaYachid. So therefore, in order to prevent me from ever doing that, if such a post would be in public domain, even if it's in private domain, outdoors, in my house, I can put something on a table. Well, no, it doesn't matter. That's a Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaYachid, belonging to the same person. He always said, no, there you can't put it down. Now, you're right, Daddy. So, Nachamo, so in a Rishus Harabim, you can carry b'tech dal adamas. All of these dinim are based on that. You're not violating anything. So I might think something is in the Rishus Harabim. I imagine you find something in a Rishus Harabim for a mitzvah's avos Yisrael. You see a fellow's item. So you want to put it on a beam. If you don't chap that you're putting it on a Rishus HaYachid, you're doing a toiva. You didn't do a dalal dabas b'Rishus Harabim. But if you're putting it on something, now if you put it on a market patur, taka do that. If you go on the street and you find your fellow's a tachshit, a $1,000 watch, whatever, you find a piece of jewelry, so you can put it on a market patur. It shouldn't be on the street. People shouldn't run over it, stand in it. A market patur would mean that it would have less than $1 within 4 amos. Within 4 amos. But now, if it's a Rishus HaYachid, you may not do it. Okay, Chevre, a mazel tov, avzasiyum, on Hoitzah, even though we'll have a lot more later, but in this Perek, we're turning to Daf Tes Amud Beis. This is so good. This is a little bit of a tam of brachas, Chevre. Enjoy it while it lasts. So now, again, after we spoke about Hoitzah, and we learned the Tosfos that gives 3 reasons why Rabbeinu HaKadosh Dafka began with that. Now we're going on the Seder of Shabbos. Shabbos begins with Erev Shabbos. So we're going to be leading up to teach us there are various activities that one may not do samuch to Shabbos, because you might go into Shabbos doing that activity. But as an intro, we're going to take a step back and forget, before we speak about Shabbos, let's speak about every day. Every day we have the chiyuv and the merit of davening mincha. So there are certain activities that we may not begin when we are already getting near the time of davening mincha, because we might forget not daven mincha. So now we're going to make a quick, just say it now. So what's mincha? From when do we daven mincha? So we learned in brachas that there are 2 times that we use in reference to the zman of mincha. There's mincha gedola and mincha ketana. Number 1, mincha is b'makom tamid shel bein ha'arbaim. Tamid shel bein ha'arbaim means it has to be brought in between the shadows, in the afternoon. Theoretically, you can argue afternoon is 12:01, right? But being that they didn't have atomic watches, so Chazal said that they needed to wait what we would call today 30 minutes after Chatzos, which is when taka, the shade, goes to the side already. Now you know it's afternoon, we'll call that 12:30. It's not 12:30 on your watch, it's Shazmanias, but let's call 12:30. 12:30 is called Mincha Gedoyla. Now, Mincha Ketana is 3 hours later, because most days of the year, de facto, the Talmud Shel Bein Arbaim was brought at 3:30. So there's Mincha Gedoyla and there's Mincha Ketana. Samuch lemincha, most Rishonim learn, means 30 minutes before. It's called you're getting near the time. So let's read the Mishnah. Lo yeshiv adam l'fnei hasaper. Don't sit down in front of a barber. Samuch lemincha. Now, if mincha means mincha ketana, it means don't begin a haircut at 3 p.m. Because mincha ketana is 3:30, samuch 30 minutes before. If mincha means mincha gedoyla, 12:30, samuch lemincha means noon. Imagine, don't sit down noon. All of this is because you might start an activity that might be oiz geschlepp with the golos, and you might miss the whole time of mincha. Now mincha ketana would make a lot more sense, even though you had that 3 hours. Mincha gedoyla, we're saying that what? That it might take 6 hours. So we'll see in the Gemara what mincha we're referring to. Achi yispalu. Now, number one is barber. Number two, v'lo yikanis adam lemerchatz. Don't go into a bath. You have to understand that the baths then were not like today. Today you're going to, how long can you take a bath? But in those days, first of all, you didn't have a bath in your house. And as we'll see in a moment, today it's called the day spa. That was the bath. Rashi will go into Pratim, what you do this, and then do that, and that can be a ganze megillah. V'loy lebursiki. Today, I would thank God we don't have to be bursik. And bursiki was one of the most foul-smelling activities that exist in the world. Ad kedei kach, that if people, their livelihood was to be a bursiki, they needed to get their shus from their wives, they needed to know about it, they made separate minyanim, because if they would walk into our shul, we would halachically not be allowed to daven. And why can they daven? The Yomi says, because once a person is so lowly and grub, they don't realize their own lowliness and coarseness. So they and crassness. So they didn't smell their own stinkerai. But now tanning was not tanning again. Tanning is what in my cheder they call what we call tanning the oivdei avodah zarah, the people that lay in the sun. That's what we call tanning. In the Chazal, tanning is fixing the hides. So it takes time because a hide has value. You want to make it into parchment because if you want, it's filled with fat. Anyway, so you can't begin a tanning session. Samach lamincha v'loy lechol, nor can you sit down to have a meal. How long can eating take? You think 5 minutes. Imagine. If this is mincha gedoyla, that means that they are afraid. If once you sat down, who knows, you might eat for 6.5 hours or 6 hours. Oy. V'loy ledin, nor can you begin a judgment as a dayan. However, in all of the above cases, if you already had begun, we're not saying for sure you're going to miss mincha. Once you began, that ein mafsik, and you don't have to interrupt. Finish what you're doing, and then daven mincha. With one exception, which is that if you didn't read the Shema, in other words, for any obligation that's biblical, now there is no Shema in the afternoon, I know that, but it's a concept. That for a biblical obligation, we would say that even if you already had begun, stop and read the Shema. But not for davening. Again, there's no Shema in the afternoon. We're going to learn later about Maidiv. But the concept is that based on the fact that the Nusach HaTfila and the Zman HaTfila is only Midrabanan, that is why Chazal said, once you already began that activity, you don't have to stop. But if there is a biblical obligation, and Chazal say, don't do your own stuff until you fulfill your biblical obligation. If you have begun, I don't care. Stop what you are doing, fulfill your chiyuv midoraisa, and then go back to your activity. Okay, so the Gemara begins, Hi, samach lamincha. What mincha are we referring to? Ilay lamincha gedoyla. So if mincha gedoyla is 12:30, samach lamincha would mean 12 o'clock. Amai loy. Doesn't make sense for none of the, you can't even begin. Ha'ika shehuz bayoim tuvas ta'asach tzait. Elot must be mincha ketana. And on this, the Mishnah says that im his chilu ein mafsikin, even though it's already at 3 p.m., but nevertheless, okay, and at 3 p.m., you're having a meal. How long can you eat for? So the Mishnah says, if you began, you don't have to stop. Hold on. If that will be the pshat in the Mishnah, nema tehevi teyufta de Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, which we, how can we, that can't be, because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, kivin shigiyaz man mincha, and he's speaking about mincha ketana, Asur la'adam she'itim klum koydem she'ispalal tfilas mincha and Abishua ben Levi. You have to see the context of the statement is implying that this importance is so much that even if you already began the meal, you have to stop it. You have to stop your meal and daven mincha. That we're not debating. That is what he meant. But how can he say that if our Mishnah says otherwise? So it says the Gemara, therefore, in order for our Mishnah not to refute Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi la'olam, our Mishnah is speaking about samach lamincha gedolah. However, every activity that the Mishnah mentioned is not your usual activity, but each one has a unique application. Let's go through all the Seder. When we're speaking about the barber, the haircut, ubitis poitus ben elasa. Remember ben elasa? We have this in Adarim, we have this in Sanhedrin. Rashi reminds us over here. So first of all, ben elasa was the name of one of the son-in-laws of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And being that in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohen Gadol took a very unique haircut. In order for us not to forget the type of haircut the Kohen Gadol took, he spent a lot of money for himself to figure out how to get that haircut done, and it took many hours to take that haircut. Now, the words that we have from Chazal is, it sounds like today it would be very easy, because today we have machines. It was a haircut that the hair was very short, but the end of one hair touched the root of the new hair. Not a zero, the modern number one, or the number two, whatever that is. In other words, it was because zero is not nice, but long hair is chmamisha, is like avodah zarah, it's like number two. Okay, and he took such haircuts. Imagine with the scissors to get every single hair the exact right length. If it's too long, it's nice good. If it's too small, it's ugly. And that took many hours. So if you're going to take a haircut like Ben Elasa, then again, if you began, they let you finish. But lachatchila, don't begin. We have any pictures over here by Rabbeinu Steinsaltz? Stami has a good picture of this haircut. And not going into a bath. Lachatchila not? Yeah. Lakula milsa de merchatz. You're not just taking a bath. You're doing the whole, there's a word for this in English. You're doing the whole cycle. It's like a chashiv day spa. So Rashi says, you're doing all the steps of a bath. Lachuv reishay, you're washing your hair. That's a big yichas then. And ulishtatev b'chamin. Then you're going to bathe in hot water. And then you're going to bathe in cold water. And then you're going to go into a schwitz. This takes 6 hours. I don't know for whom, but that's what the Gemara says. So the chatchila don't start. Now, not 6 hours. It takes many hours. Even here, now, if it would take 6 hours, they would make you stop. But this is something that it's shayach for it to take 6 hours. The whole circuit. In every room in the spot. Next, v'loy lebursiki means lebursiki gedoyla. We're speaking about a person that has many hides, and he's beginning the process. Yeah, tanning hides takes many hours, and if you have many of them, it's shayach that it should take the whole afternoon. So that's why don't start. And v'loy lechol, you're right, a normal meal doesn't take 6 hours, but we're speaking about Pesuda Gedoyla. Pesuda Gedoyla would mean today a wedding. And taka, by a wedding, you're eating and you're dancing and you're fabrengen. It's a certain meal that taka was a lange meal. Good for leaders. Long meal with a lot of good food. Mitlan. V'loy ledin, meaning betchilas din. You can't begin a judgment because you never know how long the din Torah is going to take. So that makes sense. That you can't, lachatchila, don't begin as of 12 p.m. That is the first answer. However, Rabbi Yaakov Omar, I'm standing with you. We're speaking about mincha gedoyla, because if the Mishnah is mincha ketana, then it refutes Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. But you don't have to sign the Mishnah that we're speaking about the unusual haircut of Ben Elasa. Any haircut, any meal, anyone. So why can't you start samach lemincha? Maybe the scissor will break, and this barber only has one scissor. And it's interesting that these activities, see, I'll give you an example. When you're writing something, it's common that people write and they take a break. But every activity that we mention now are activities that it's uncommon for you to stop in the middle. Think about it. When you take a haircut, how comfortable would you be? We did half now, and we'll do the other half later. No. Same thing with tanning, the same thing with the bathing. No, it's something that people normally do it in one sitting. So even though the haircut should take a half an hour, it should take 15 minutes, but it's shayach that if something goes off, they have to find another scissor, it can become Take a haircut in Brazil. That's shaykh over there. Scissor will break, and there's no scissor, and don't ask.
Here, as long as there's extra scissors, you're fine.
So some places can say that. Sometimes we don't say that. Sometimes we say once Chazal made a gzeira, even though the reason is inapplicable, a gzeira stands. Not that you're going through the whole circuit. You're only going there lahazia ba'alma. You're only going there to chap one shvitz. You can't start. Daven mincha first. Why? Because gzeira shema yis alpha. You might feel faint. And if you're going to feel faint, you won't be able to daven. Let's go out. Really, you're not going there with your 50 hides, and you're not in the beginning. You're not even going to 10. You're just going to make an inspection. Stam evenly yuni ba'alma. You might see that your merchandise has a defect. And what's going to happen? You're going to be distracted. Distracted means either you won't be able to have kavana, or you're going to do something to fix it. In other words, if you bought the lottery, don't check if you won the numbers before mincha, because what's going to happen? Think about it. If you win, how will you daven mincha? You'll be too excited. But, don't begin something that might put you completely emotionally off. And even Besuda Ketana, don't begin Samach LaMincha. Mincha Gedoyla, 12 p.m. You know why? When it comes to eating, if you have good food, because you might only plan to eat nothing burger, and you might eat without an ende. Okay, even Big Mardin. Because that's the nature of it. This people should relate to. Even if you're just going to give the final ruling, once you sit down and you start opening up the svaras, you might find a flaw in your conclusion, and then you'll begin all the way back from the beginning. Dilma chazi tama v'sasar dina, and you're going to start retrying. And in other words, that's why once you began, you can finish, because there's plenty of time to finish what you're doing and to daven mincha. But lachatchila, don't start even samach lemincha gedoyla. Now comes the next question. Okay, once you start, you don't have to stop. How do you define starting? This is such an interesting amud. How do you define you started your haircut? What would you answer? You started the haircut from when you took the first snip? No, before that. What's the point? Think about it. When would you call the beginning of a haircut? When you're heading in that direction. That's interesting. We make an appointment. So the Gemara is going to say they always had a shmata that they put on you to protect your clothing from becoming soiled from your hair, to make sure that your clothing gets soiled from the guy before you here. That's the minhag until today, right? They put that black thing on you, they get you dirty with someone else's hair. From the moment you put on that the haircut began. When they put on the barber's cloth. Next, al-birkav on your knees. They put it on the knees then. It's so funny. How do you define the beginning of a bath? When did you begin to bathe? So, when you take off the first cloth, what was the first thing that you take off when you take a bath? Your hat. So they used to have turbans. The moment you start rolling off your turban, that means you began already. What's the pshat? You began the tanning procedure. Misha Yikshar Bank safe of when you tie the sleeves between your shoulders. It actually goes through the procedure. They not to get their sleeves dirty. So they would put their arms out of their sleeves. So they had two sleeves hanging down. They wouldn't take off their shirt, God forbid. And they would tie the sleeves behind their back. So once you did that hachana begashmi in your garments, that means that you began the tanning procedure. And this holds true even if you're only going to inspect. Because we just learned liyuna be'alma. So what? When you went to inspect, you wanted to be hands-on. Just in case you need to do something, you should do it. Now, how do you define the beginning of a meal? Here we have a machlokes already. Rav says, when you wash your hands until it's yadayim. Rab Chanina says, when you unfasten your belt. And v'loy pligi. What's v'loy pligi? Rab Chanina, who was raised in Bavel, in the Babylonians, used to walk around the whole day having tight belts, right? So before they ate, they needed to unfasten their belt. Rav, not where he lived. He lived in Suda, but Rav grew up in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, they were more modest, these tight-fitting clothing. They walked around without such a tight belt, so they didn't need to open up the belt. It wasn't such an important step. So Rab Chanina was us. In Babel, that was the first thing that they did. It's all about the first thing, but in Babel, they needed first. They unfastened the belt, and then they went to wash. Rav is Lahu Darton over there, meaning Eretz Yisrael. Amar Abaye says, Abaye, Hani Chavran Babeloi. Oh, I guess the man, the Amar, Tfilas, Arvis, Rishus. Remember that? From Brachas, that was the big machloikes. So according to those who opine that Tfilas Arvis is Rishus, let's repeat what we learned there twice, and twice with Rishus doesn't mean optional. It means that it's a mitzvah, but it's not an obligation. So now, how do we apply the concept of a Mishnah to Maitiv? And let's use the first approach in the Tosfos in the bottom of the Amid. We're speaking about a Yid that said the Shema already. So there's no biblical Shema here. It's only about Maitiv. So if we view the whole davening of Maitiv as Rishus, then we say that Kivan the Shadalei Hem Yonei, that once here in Bavel, you begin a meal by opening up your belt. So once you opened up your belt, Loi Metrachin Alei, we don't tell you to stop the meal and to daven Maitiv. However, Ulaman do Amar, that Maitiv is a chayva. Aside of the Shema, that Maitiv is an obligation, of course not a biblical obligation, it's not more than Mincha, but it's an obligation, then even if you already began by how in Bavel? By untying your belt, Matrachin Alei, we tell you stop the meal, fasten, refasten your belt, get up and daven Maitiv. Now, this doesn't jive with the whole Mishnah. What is the whole Mishnah? Minchas l'kul ha'alma chayva. The Mishnah says, don't begin, but once you began, you don't have to stop. So why are we saying that Maitiv, even if Maitiv is chayva, why is Maitiv more chamur than Mincha? Fragt die Gemara, v'hat tfilas Mincha, that the l'kul ha'alma chayva and yet v'tran im eschilo ein mafsikin. So why is Maitiv more? Maitiv is different than Mincha. If Maitiv is chayva, Maitiv is more chamur than Mincha. Why? We have a few answers. Omar Rab Chanina. He says, Omar Rab Chanina, if I get part of the question, that how do you define beginning Mincha? Mishayater Chagoyroi, when you unfasten your belt. In other words, when you unfasten your belt from Mincha, we just learned in the Mishnah, you don't have to stop to daven Mincha. Why? By Maitiv, would you have to? Even if it's chayva, it's not more chayva than Mincha. Daf Yud answers the Gemara, a few answers. Number one, Hassan over there. Very interesting. By Mincha, Lo shchicha shichrus. Most people don't drink alcoholic beverages when they eat during the day. Normal people, okay. So therefore, you should daven Mincha. You didn't daven Mincha. You began the meal. Gesundheit, have your meal. How will it finish the meal and daven Mincha? You're not going to be under the influence, and under the influence remain at daven. But at night, it was common that people drink. So it makes a lot of sense. Don't have your meal and become intoxicated and then have a whole problem whether you can daven Maitiv. You have to be more machmir. Stop, daven Maitiv, and then go back to your meal and make your l'chaim. Inami, or another answer. Forget about drinking. Let's say a person doesn't drink, or the opposite. You drink here and there. It's not about drinking. It's b'mincha kiven de kviyah leizimna. Mincha has an end time. Now, Maitiv also has an end time. But let's not forget that Maitiv, right, you have the whole night. Even if we're speaking about Mincha Gedoyla, there's only 6 hours. So that's the way of the psychology. When I note before I do something that I have a more limited window to be able to fulfill my mitzvah, I'm afraid I'm going to miss that window. There's a mirsas. Once I elude myself, I have the whole night, it's a psychological thing. I'm not that anxious to get it out of my way. I have so much time makes it worse. By Mincha Kiv L'Kviyah Leizimna, there's a fixed time. Meaning the fixed time is close. It's at the end of the day. So therefore, mirsas means fear, mirsas means anxiety. It's a word that's used in many other areas in halacha. And you're not going to be paisheya by missing mincha. But arvis, kiven del kula lailas man arvis, therefore loy mirsas, and the loy mirsas makes it worse. And v'asi lemifsha, so Chazal say, refasten your belt. We're not done yet. Frek the Gemara Maskav lo Rab Sheishes, trichusa lemesar hem yonei. Ich verstehe nicht the whole concept over here. You're speaking about by mincha. But once you unfasten your belt, you began already. No, I get it. Once you sat down, once you're eating, you don't have to stop. But just because you unfastened your belt, it's such a minimal act. Refasten it. And daven mincha. You didn't begin the meal. You didn't begin the su'udah yet. You didn't wash yet. And furthermore, v'oid, even if you're going to tell me that fastening the belt is a tircha, so daven mincha without a gartel, without fastening your belt. V'oid leiku hachi, stand up on a gartel and daven. Says the Gemara, no, never daven without a gartel. Never daven without fastening your belt. Because it says, Hikoin likras elikecha Yisrael, prepare to meet your God. Not the way people think prepare to meet the God means you're about to pass away. No. Every time we daven, we're meeting God. And preparing to meet God means I have to do an action in preparation. And that action, number one, I have to fasten my belt. Dafka gartel. It's more than just wearing a gartel. It doesn't only mean to fasten the belt. It's also fastening the belt. It means that I have to straighten out all of my clothing. That's already a tircha. So number one, you have to wear a gartel. Number two, for the first question, is it such a big deal? It's not just about the gartel. When you're sitting down, once you unfasten your belt, it is considered a big tircha to do the hikain lekrasa lekecha Yisrael, and therefore you can daven mincha. Rava bar Avhuna, Ramei Pumzikei. Right, he would put on special footwear. We're speaking about people that lived in areas that no one would walk barefoot in front of a chashuv a person. Like now, like in the Western society. You don't go barefoot. We're speaking about getting ready. He would put on footwear, fancy footwear, and then he davened, and he would say, Rava, instead of putting on fancy clothing, did the opposite. Shadei Glimei, he took off his outer fancy coat. Not only did he take off a fancy coat, but upachar yadei, he would clasp his hands together in a way that people would hold on to the hands when they're asking rachmanas of a leader. Right? And the details that we put the right hand over the left hand, many people put it over their heart. But, we're going into details that the way he got ready for davening is not by putting on fancy shoes, but by taking off his fancy outer coat, by being more simple, by clasping his hands together, and then he davened. And he would say, why am I getting ready by minimizing my dress? He would say, Ka'avda kamamare. We have a very similar Gemara, remember in Brachas, Daf Lamed Amud Beis, Daf Lamed Aleph, whether ein onul mispalel ela mitoich koived roish, or ein onul mispalel ela mitoich simcha. You got to get ready. So either you got ready by being you focused on a koived roish and you became humble. You got ready. You took off your fancy clothing. You stood ka'avda kamamare, or you would put on fancy clothing. And Amar Avashi, I'll tell you how I reconcile both. Depends when. Chazina lei l'Rav Kahana the following. Ki'ika tzara ba'alma. When there was a tzara in the world, there was a coronavirus, then Shadei Glimi, he would take off his garments, take off his outer clothes, not take off his garments. He would take off anything fancy. He would underdress. Upachar yadei, he would clasp his hands together in a very humbling, physical stance, and he would daven. And he would say, that's the way I'm getting ready, ka'avda kamamari. But ki'ika shlama, when there was peace in the world, then lavish, he would dress. Umeskase, and he would cover himself. Umesatev, and he would wrap himself in a beget chashuv. And, right, umatzle, and then he would daven. And Amari would say, Yikoin lekras, elikecha Yisrael, to be continued.